Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Western countries have imposed unprecedented economic sanctions. These measures have targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including energy, finance, and technology, and have significantly limited Russia's access to global markets. But since these measures were implemented, the Russian economy is still significantly big. For instance, if we graph Russia's nominal GDP, we get to see that while it has contracted, it hasn't really fallen off by a lot. In 2022, Russia had a nominal GDP of over $2.27 trillion, but by 2024, Russia's GDP had only contracted to just $2.18 trillion, which by all means isn't a lot. One big factor that these sanctions aim to do is to limit Russia's exports. The United States is particularly focused on restricting Russia's ability to sell oil and gas, which have historically been the backbone of its economy. If we were to graph out the exports of goods and services of Russia, we actually get to see that there is a significant decline, from $635 billion in 2022 to just $466 billion by 2023. This, however, is still big. $466 billion still puts Russia as one of the world's largest exporters. The reason for this continued exports and somewhat economic stability is because when the West sanctioned Russia, it went on to look east. What that meant is that instead of the US and Europe as economic partners, Russia would go to India and China. To understand how this works, let's graph out the total imports of China and India, starting with China first. Here you can see that the total imports of China from Russia has skyrocketed. In 2020, total imports from Russia amounted to just $57.8 billion, but by 2023, it rose to over $129 billion. That's no small figure, and it goes to show that even though the West may hit Russia with sanctions, China would undoubtedly step in to help. But what is China actually buying from Russia? Well, if we were to graph out the Chinese imports from Russia, we get to see that a majority of them, $94 billion, is actually mineral fuels, oil, and distillation products. This is basically Russia's key export, and it shows how dependent China has become on Russian energy. With Western sanctions limiting Russia's ability to sell oil and gas to Europe, China has stepped in as a major buyer. Let's graph out the imports of Germany from Russia to show you how it's the exact opposite of China. Here, you can see that imports from Germany didn't just fall slightly, it decreased by a massive $26.9 billion. In 2022, imports from Germany amounted to over $31.2 billion, but by 2023, it decreased to just $4.2 billion. Now the thing is, as we also mentioned, India is also in the story. If we were to graph out the imports from India, we also see that there is a huge increase over the past few years. And likewise, if we were to graph out the imports by category, we also see the same story as with China. It's all about the oil and gas. This makes sense for both China and India, because the two countries are among the world's largest energy consumers. Securing oil and gas from Russia allows them to fuel their economies while also reducing dependence on Western suppliers. For Russia, this shift in trade has been essential for keeping its economy afloat despite Western sanctions. But there's another reason why China and India continued to buy them, and it's because Russia has been selling them at a discount. According to reports, Russia has been selling these oil at prices below the $60 per barrel price cap imposed by Western nations. For context, the price of oil as of the time of writing, and even back in 2022, has been trading around $75 for the latest information, and more than $100 back in 2022. This big difference in prices have not only allowed Russia to export more, but it has allowed both China and India to secure substantial savings and diversify their energy sources. For India, these discounted imports have led to significant financial benefits. Estimates indicate that India saved between $10.5 billion and $13 billion between 2022 and 2024 by importing Russian oil at reduced prices. This strategy not only reduced India's energy expenses, but also allowed Indian refiners to enhance their profit margins by processing cheaper crude. But here's the thing. Even though both China and India have been buying Russia's oil exports to help keep their economy up, China has been doing more than that. When Western companies exited the Russian market, it left a gap in various consumer sectors. Chinese automotive brands have capitalized on this opportunity. In recent years, the Russian market has witnessed a dramatic surge in Chinese-made vehicles. For instance, Chinese automaker Chery has quadrupled its revenue in Russia, reaching over 590 billion rubles in 2023, and now dominates the top foreign companies operating in Russia. Let's even graph out the car brand market share in Russia. Here you can see that the top spot is Lada, which is a Russian brand. But as you can see, Chinese brands like Chery, Haval and Geely have taken up significant market share over 3 years. Chery, for instance, had seen its market share grow from 2.6% in 2021 to over 11.2% in 2023. But if we were to switch this graph and look at the Western or Western-leaning auto brands from South Korea or Japan, we would see a significant decline. Here, you can see that South Korea's Kia once held over 13.1%, but by 2023 it dropped to just 3.2%. Renault, which is a European car brand, had even seen its market share go to zero. Well, the data at least shows that Renault's market share is zero. And it is important to know that it is not only the automotive sector, but consumer electronics, household appliances, and even low-tech goods have also largely come from China. With Chinese products increasingly becoming synonymous with affordable quality, many Russian consumers have turned to Chinese alternatives as Western brands either left or reduced their presence. That is why, if we were to graph out the Chinese exports to Russia, we actually see a similar trend to the overall imports. We get to see that while China had increased its imports from Russia, they have also increased their exports. Here you can see that in 2020, Chinese exports to Russia amounted to just $50.5 billion. But by 2023, it rose to a massive $111 billion. Likewise, if we were to graph this out by category, we get to see that they are led by machinery, nuclear reactors, and boilers at $25.22 billion. And then you also see vehicles at $22.5 billion, and consumer electronics from the electronics and electrical equipment at $17 billion. Now, beyond these, another significant way that China is helping Russia's economy is by trading using rubles and Chinese yuan. When the two countries trade, they don't trade using the US dollar anymore, or at least using less of it, with some reports saying that it now dominates 80% of the total trade. This de-dollarization effort is partly a response to Western sanctions, which often use dollar transactions as a point of leverage. By transacting in their own currencies, Russia and China not only bypass some of the sanctions restrictions, but also strengthen their economic sovereignty. Here's a graph on the annual cross-border payments by the non-banking sector in China. Here, you can see that the US dollar, which is still in use, has been overtaken by the RMB, which is China's local currency. Put simply, this means that more cross-border transactions are now being conducted in RMB rather than in US dollars. The reason why this benefits Russia and China is because it reduces their dependence on the US financial system, making them less vulnerable to sanctions or economic pressure from the West. By using the ruble and yuan in trade, Russia can keep its economy running despite restrictions on its access to the dollar. For China, promoting the yuan in international trade strengthens its currency's global role, aligning with its long-term goal of challenging the dollar's dominance. Finally, it is also important to know that there have been reports saying that China has been supplying non-lethal components and dual-use goods that help Russia maintain its military production. There have also been reports showing that China has been offering industrial products that support the reconstruction of Russia's manufacturing base. What this basically means is that China is indirectly helping Russia sustain its military and industrial operations despite Western sanctions. By providing key materials like microchips, machine tools, and other essential components, China ensures that Russia can continue producing military equipment and other critical goods. Now, before we end the video, it is essential to talk about the reason behind this. The answer to some is simple, and it's all because China has a lot to gain for this. Buying up cheap oil and being able to export goods and services to Russia without much competition is a huge economic advantage for China. With Western companies pulling out of Russia due to sanctions, Chinese businesses have stepped in to fill the gap, securing a dominant position in the Russian market. This allows China to sell more goods, expand its economic influence, and strengthen its trade ties with Russia without facing much competition. But another reason can also be because of the no limits partnership declared by Putin and Xi in early 2022, which symbolizes much more than just a pragmatic economic arrangement. It represents an ideological alignment based on a shared opposition to what they perceive as Western hegemony. So, for China's support of Russia, it is not merely by economic gain, but also by challenging the existing international order that has long been dominated by Western institutions. By backing Russia, China signals its readiness to build a multipolar world where economic power is decoupled from traditional Western financial systems. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.